This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill.
I'm somewhat more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff.
This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse. Unfortunately, my co-host, Bill Hamill, is not here today. We're both very busy, so we'll give him a break. I interviewed Scott Roberts from Easy House Relief, easyhouserelief.com, and it was a great interview. Scott's a local agent, flipper, investor. He got into the industry as a high school student. He was doing some construction, got his real estate license at 18. So always enjoyable talking with someone who's a career real estate professional. We did get off script a little bit, just talking about the state of the market and how to get into the short-term rental industry. But I think those can be some of the best conversations because they're very genuine. Scott Roberts, thank you for being here today. Very excited for this interview. Scott's here from Easy House Relief. That's easyhouserelief.com, a local landlording service for where Bill and I are from in upstate New York. Scott, tell us more about yourself. How did you get into real estate? I know you're an agent. You're also a landlord. How did this all start?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Stephen. This is fun. And I got started and sort of just grew up in the business, got my license when I was 18 as a realtor. And you can get started at any age. I did a couple roofs in high school doing construction, and that got me some experience on the ground level. Did a couple kitchens and have slowly just been taking it one step at a time, growing into it more and more.
So what was after that? You got your license at 18.
Got my license, went to college at James Madison University. The first summer ended up flipping a house in Round Lake Village with my dad, and then finished college, thought about the corporate world. I think that's a big decision a lot of young professionals have to work through, is that entrepreneurship versus the job, and decided to go real estate and did another flip right as I came out of school. And that one deal was what really brought me back to New York from Virginia, and was like the gateway of like, this can be real and this could really happen. So that was a short sale that I did. And since then I've flipped over 20 houses and then been in the top 10% of realtors in the area for the last 5 years. And have found just networking and the simple block and tackle of real estate can open doors and create deal opportunities. And this week I have 3 closings. I closed 2 as a realtor and bought another house to flip yesterday. So sat down at a big table. I always tell people I like meetings at big tables and spent some money. So that was good.
That's great. 3 closings in 1 week. That is very impressive. And
it's a nice base hit.
Definitely. And I agree with the point. It sounds like 3 base hits. Get the bases loaded now.
Yeah.
I agree with the point with it only takes one deal for it to feel real. Whether you're wholesaling, investing, flipping, you get that one good deal under your belt. You're like, okay, I can actually do this now and make a living and sustain myself with this. So Bill and I just did a podcast on identity, and I think that's a huge part of this industry. Do you consider yourself more of an agent or a flipper?
I would say I'm going through an identity crisis in that, I'm trying to evolve, and my future is building into the landlording space. And I think everyone sort of as an artist or entrepreneur, you have to work through that identity, and it really is a metamorphosis. So for me, I've been reflecting a lot on that and going forward and seeing myself more as a real estate professional, not just in one specific space.
Yeah, it's a never-ending process. I speak with a lot of people getting into the industry, and they ask, should I flip? Should I wholesale? Should I try and invest? And I always lean towards trying to invest because that's how you can build wealth, build a portfolio. Flipping and wholesaling, it's great income. It's great cash. It can make you rich, but it doesn't often make you wealthy because you have to keep working in order to get that next check. Is that part of the reason why you want to lean more into the landlording side?
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of reasons where the flipping can be great as getting that, big chunk of cash feeling, but then that feeling subsides. And if you get a portfolio up and running, very quickly, if you put 20 units together, very quickly, that's like almost a flip worth of money every month. And for me, getting started, I did have to take on some debt going through college. And for me, it was something where I was like, needed those like just cash infusions. And I think anyone getting started, it's okay to flip. It's great to wholesale. And that's how I also did the first couple deals, was a wholesale. Or for other people that may not know what that means, like just a fancy finder's fee, really, finding a really good deal and saying, I am the only one that has this great opportunity. And now last year, my business partner and I, we did, in that mind, going back to that identity, we were like, let's shift gears to a point where we're going to hold on to some of these houses that we're buying and rent them out.
Wait, you mean you can get paid in real estate just for finding a deal? Tell me more about that.
Just for finding. Yeah. It's, people say when they get started, like, how do you find a deal? And the simple answer is like, how do you meet anybody? Like, you just go through life, you get somebody's phone number, you tell them that you're trying to buy real estate. They say like their aunt or somebody wants to sell and move to Florida or go somewhere. And that's how it got started for me. And, I would say don't do the bandit signs. I tried that thinking it would be cool. And, I think I'm past a statute of limitations on that, but I hired a friend to go like put all these out, and they're not necessarily the smoothest. You get a ton of calls, but I found just networking and then driving for dollars is another term that's been used. Of if you see a house or see an old for sale by owner sign. And then also networking in the realtor community. Realtors are not necessarily good or bad. They're just also in the marketplace. And if you present yourself as saying, hey, I want to find deals, I've gotten, connections where they're just like, hey, this person doesn't want to list, or this person just needs a deal right now. And they don't want any other delays. Do you want to do this or not?
Yeah, a couple great points in there. It's like anything else. You start talking to people, whether
Mm-hmm.
you're driving by and you see someone, blowing the leaves, and you're like, hey, do you know the owner here? Can I get their info?
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask them a question. Or you see an owner or a tenant even working on something, and you go and just start that conversation. And like you said, you had to talk to people. You got to tell them what you're doing. No one's going to help you if you don't tell them what you're doing. It's one of the biggest parts. And I think wholesaling, flipping is a great way to get started and sustain the investor side of it. And you can do both at the same time. You can buy your first duplex, live in it while you wholesale out of your bedroom, and keep growing that portfolio. So tell us more about your plans to keep collecting real estate. I know you mentioned you have a partner.
Yeah. So in 2015, I met Ted Lutz. He was an architect by training and was ready for a career change, and that shift in his life. And we found a house through another one of my friends. So I gave that friend a finder's fee, and he was an insurance agent. So networking with professionals in general, always a great idea. And that's how I found that deal. Was he had just heard that this house needed to shift gears for their insurance, like it was no longer an occupied house, and that they were looking to sell. And for us going to collecting, we did the flips, and now we also see this idea locally where there are a lot of houses that you can buy that are smaller and designed where maybe someone wouldn't want them to be forever homes, but would be great short-term rentals. And we're seeing, because of the higher prices that we saw in the last few years, people starting to go back to the inner cities locally. In the Capital District, we have a bunch of great cities that haven't always been, updated, or certain areas that have smaller homes that need to be refurbished. They're sort of hitting that half-life of a house. And we found a place, bought it for a little over $50,000. We're into it for $100,000 now, and we're just going to hold on to it. And it's rented out at $1,600 a month.
Wow, those are good numbers.
Yeah, so like if you're playing Monopoly, you have the hotels, and right now our strategy is let's just stay with the green little houses.
So that's renting very well. It sounds like long term. You mentioned short term rental on smaller homes. Tell us more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the smaller homes, and that's something where we did think about an Airbnb idea, but haven't gone down like that full send on Airbnb. But what we found is if you found like the best, if you're just put your mind in as a tenant, and for anyone that's just getting into real estate, just maybe you're a tenant right now and just think about where would be the best place for me to be and what would be ideal. And a lot of people gravitate back to, I'd love to rent a single family house as a tenant. And traditionally, a lot of landlords are saying, hey, let's get to the hotels and have 8 units in one location. Our strategy is sort of blending that flipping of buying a house that needs to be refurbished at an extraordinary price, but then also providing a house that someone would love to rent. Like it's super cozy. You don't have to worry about neighbors. And for us, there's just very little turnover and management per se. So the management time is really beneficial for us. Cool.
I like the idea. I get very excited about short-term rentals. The one I have has beaten all underwriting and projections that I ever had. So that gets me very excited about the space moving forward. But typically when I think of short-term rentals, I am usually thinking about a house for a group, large bedroom count, large bathroom count, outdoor amenities. Do you think the small house style can sustain itself with short-term rentals competing with hotels, or are you looking for more remote areas that might not have that type of competition?
Good points. And I would say it depends on the city and location and what the blend of that visitor wants. So the smaller, cozy places can work great for someone coming in for a specific event. If you're going for a place that's like a destination feeling, what we have is not going to be a good fit. So some travelers want that, like, hey, I'm just going to go to a lakefront property just to be on the lake. We would be more, professional based, or coming into it for a city reason. I'm going to this town to do this business or this event, and I'm going to stay in this comfortable place.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. If you're talking about lakefront, I'll sleep in a tent if it's lakefront. That's a different story.
Yeah. Just give me one of those Airstreams. And
exactly. People do great with those. That's also a good strategy. Yeah. Those cheap capital Airbnbs that rent well. So you're mostly looking in the Capital District of New York?
Yes. Within Schenectady, Albany, Rensselaer, and Saratoga County. That's our strike zone, and I would venture out of that for opportunities potentially, but right now we're just trying to stay in that sort of that pocket of the areas that we know.
Mm-hmm. And have you looked at syndicating larger assets or anything with that type of investor capital, or are you mostly trying to knock this out with your partner and manage it yourselves?
Right now, just the partner and I, and then per deal, depending on the size of the deal, where that could go. So I'd love to buy an apartment complex. I think that's sort of like everyone's like next adventure. And like, it's always a dream to hit that moment of, hey, I have a 40 unit, 50 unit, 100 unit space and community that I'm managing. And for that, maybe we'd bring in more partners or do a syndication.
Absolutely. I think that is every investor's dream when they're starting off to have that 200 unit complex.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially after you live in a couple of them.
Yeah. So that would be something working through. Yeah.
So what's your goal right now for acquisitions? Are you going direct to seller? Are you asking for seller financing as you see rates rising? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. For us right now, we do go direct to the seller the best we can. I've been networking. So back to that apartment complex, through the tax records, you can get a nice list of all the commercial properties in an area. And I've been calling, trying to just build relationships, like not as much saying like, do you want to sell now? But just saying like, hey, keep me in mind. And then in terms of the flipping and also sort of like the smaller scale, going right to the consumer, we did a direct marketing campaign. We also hired a gentleman that did a letter campaign, and he designed it where it felt very organic, and that went really well. You do get a lot of interesting calls, and I think you got to have humor with it and just try to keep people talking, and also share that, this is authentically what we're doing. And, people do get a lot of mail, and there's a lot of different real estate mailers, but answering the phone as best you can and just having a conversation, and then pulling on the real estate history. I have a client that has probably give or take 50 units in one particular city. And he's at a point where he's starting to get into commercial deals. And that's something where we're talking about a owner financing, where for tax reasons, he would want a payment plan and he doesn't really need the cash right away. And it's just something where he could say, hey, I'll sell all my 2 families because I want to focus on bigger stuff. And if you had 5 or 10 2 families, that would be another thing that I'm reviewing now.
Yeah, that sounds good. Seller financing, it's almost always a better option if you can make it happen. And it's all about creativity. You just listed 4 or 5 different ways to make a deal happen. The deals are out there. It's just who's going to be creative enough to find them and execute on them.
Yeah. Do you got any deals, Steven? What do you got working on?
I love the reverse questions here. Yeah, we more than I can keep up with right now. We have a 13 unit under contract that we're gonna hopefully close on first week of December, and then we're hopefully sending out 2 LOIs this morning. So got some more in the works, and it's always fun
Letters of intent.
Yes, it's always fun going through that process.
Yeah. Congrats.
Thank you. They give you a price. We send a letter of intent, a little under that price, try and see if we can work it out, maybe somewhere in the middle.
Cool. Is that local to New York, or is that one of the Florida adventures?
So I haven't touched any multifamily in Florida yet. The numbers just don't make sense. There's so many investors willing to park capital there. And at my stage in my career, I need a little bit of cash flow, which is why I have an Airbnb there. So the 13 unit under contract, that's in Schenectady. One of the LOIs is also in Schenectady. It's a 16 unit. And then the other one is actually a Lake George property with a bunch of different little cabins on it. That'd be for short term. Maybe why I got so excited when you mentioned lakefront. It's on my mind today.
Yes. Yeah. It's if you needed RJ Gallup, he's a agent at Sterling Homes. At the brokerage. The guy, he's been buying lake stuff. He's been doing great.
They're not building any more lakefront property, It is what it is.
And the Adirondacks are really not pro development. So you really have to find what's something that's already there. And then he would be a connection, I'd say, if you ever wanted to just bounce ideas off of for lake. He also got involved with everyone. If you've been to Adirondack, you run into these old motels like that are sort of scary right by the side of the road, like getting these things back to a modern edge. And he worked with a gentleman that owned a few of those as well. So taking that old motel idea, trying to make it into a modern Airbnb opportunity.
Yeah, that sounds exciting to me. We can go off topic here for a minute. I keep talking to people about how much I like the short-term space, because you're providing a vacation, you're providing memories, you're this nice host who's there to help if anything's needed, as opposed to the landlord side where you're that mean, nasty, greedy landlord who owns their personal home. It's just a very different feeling. Yeah,
it really is. And it's something that when you go to marketing, it's like the classic, like the 4 P's of marketing. They say product, price, place, promotion. And with the Airbnb, it's a totally different marketing feeling. And the consumer is paying you sometimes 10 times what they would for a regular rental, but they're also it's just like a joyous occasion as opposed to that monthly bill that everybody hates.
Oh yeah. So. And every time I get a booking on my phone, I get excited. And I think there is a little bit of oversaturation in the Airbnb market. And I think we'll see some of the properties that aren't as special, aren't as unique start to fall off. I mean, little things like having a professional photographer, it's not that hard. It doesn't cost that much. And it makes such a big difference between that and the person who lists their property with the iPhone photos where it's kind of blurry and a little dark.
Yep. That's a big thing. And I did a flip in Round Lake Village, and we did think, and we also had a buyer that was going to pay us more than anyone else because he was going to Airbnb it. It's a really great village. But then we're also seeing how municipalities are starting to change the rules of allowing short-term stays. So that's like another big thing that's really like it's a frontier market. Like everyone's just getting to it. And a lot of people are saying, hey, I don't want this zoning. I don't want new neighbors every day. That being said, property rights have property rights, and certain areas, though, you're seeing that pushback. So,
man, we could talk for hours about this. I think that's the biggest risk involved with Airbnb right now.
It is. I think it is. And I love Round Lake Village. It's super cool. And I also, as someone that goes home every day to the place I call home, and just like, I know who my neighbors are, I can understand just as a feeling like I don't want new neighbors every day. There's just like that sense of like, I know who's around me, which gives a little bit of security. That being said, I think as anyone going into Airbnb space, if you could find a place where maybe all your neighbors are also Airbnb-ing, like by a lake, that's a win.
But as a host, you don't want that competition.
In a place that's true.
And it's not
or you have that.
It's not just new neighbors every day. People are going to Airbnbs to party. I mean, I'm 26, so maybe that's why I think that way. But usually when they're checking in, they're checking in with a 30 rack and they're there to party. And that's the biggest problem is what I see. People going into these neighborhoods and being loud and disruptive. But I agree with the property rights aspect of it.
Yeah. I had a client in Troy. And you can, if anyone wants to look at this address, it's on Zillow still. It's 5 Elm Place, aka 8th Street, off of Hoosick. And it was a 3-story, 2-unit building. So the owner's unit had a double-decker, and it was just gorgeous. And he ended up renting it out. And at one point, he actually rented it out to the producers of the HBO show that was filming in Troy, and actually had a consistent and this was the dream, find an Airbnb that someone wants to stay in for like 3 weeks at a time. That's also cool. And unfortunately on one of the other nights, he did have it wasn't the professionals, but it was just another local team that came through and did have a party. And, I got called by the neighbors, and it was uncomfortable for everybody. And that being said, it got ironed out, wasn't the end of the world. And I think, maybe there's a market for a place that's out in the hills of Stillwater or Mechanicsville or Galloway, where it's like, hey, come to the farm, stay on the farm, and party in the barn, something like that. You're allowed to party as long as it's in the barn.
Yep. Be very upfront about the house rules. And that's a tough one because you're never going to expect that from a professional like that. It sounds like a dream situation for a host. A couple of tips. I like just having this coffee conversation with you in the morning, but a couple of tips to help the listeners. Yeah. Oh, me too. If you are hosting and you want to avoid the parties, make it a 2-night minimum. You don't want anyone checking in for one night, having the party and leaving. And then you can also have the settings say that no one who lives in that city is allowed to book it. So no one who lives in Tampa, Florida can book my Airbnb, because why are they booking an Airbnb if they live in the same city? It's not going to be a good reason.
Yeah. I didn't know you could do that. That's a cool cool move within the system. And that makes sense.
Yeah, because they have to verify where they're from.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't want anyone from the same city to stay there for 2 nights.
Yeah.
So taking a step back here, you were 18 when you got started. I speak with a lot of people who are just getting into the industry. They want help getting into it. Would you suggest to someone who's younger to get their license at 18?
I would say your license is always an asset and at least just one tool in the toolbox of real estate of like your options. That being said, you got to be careful that, you set goals of like, if you do want to be a landlord, you need to make sure that that's in line with your realtor work as well. Being a realtor is awesome. And individually, that's a great career path. I think the thing I've had to work through is breaking down and delineating, like, I want to be a realtor and do certain deals, but I also need to spend guaranteed time on trying to find opportunities for me to buy myself. And sometimes that is like, you can only give so much time.
Yeah.
So I think if you're starting from ground zero, being a realtor can be an awesome first step. And for me, that was really helpful. So I think it's a positive all the way around. And even if you're really experienced, I still think having a license is beneficial, but then you just want to use that wisely.
Mm-hmm. They're both full-time jobs. I'm really glad, fortunate I got into the business with Bill, who was a full-time investor, who was also a realtor broker. And so I think I picked up on his mindset of, I'm an investor, but I also have this license, which is an asset, and helps me with my creativity as an investor and helps me close deals.
Yeah. And then just having that, like that objective of like, this is the mission. I got to focus on the mission. I may have to turn aside certain buyer clients or, certain creative realtor work that may take too much time. That being said, as an investor, you also want to cut back on other things. You don't want to necessarily buy or go after certain types of properties that won't pay back in the time value to you.
Definitely. ROE, return on effort. I'll quote Bill here. You get what you focus on. I firmly believe in that.
Yeah, dude, that's a good one.
Yep. It's so true.
And time, and just like that's something I've had to work on though. It's just time management.
Mm-hmm. And it's okay to have that focus shift every couple of weeks. If you have to do a renovation for 2 weeks and that's your focus, dive in and get it done. And then go back to the acquisition side or whatever else you need to focus on.
Yep.
So I want to respect your time here. We do have 3 wrap-up questions for the show. This is the Collecting Real Estate show. And they say you have to have 3 of something to have a collection. So this is our collection of questions for you.
Awesome. Fire away.
First question. In 5 words or less, what's the most important thing you've learned since you started collecting real estate?
Take it one day at a time.
Okay. I like that.
Like just enjoy the day. I think as a aggressive, wanting to be successful people in real estate, we sort of think to the future or want to tackle weeks at a time in one day. And I always remember this on Monday of like, Monday's normally crazy because everybody calls and that's the thing. Like everybody wants to call to get it started. But just on Mondays, I remind myself there's 4, there's 5, there's 7 days in the week still. It doesn't all have to happen on Monday. And then as bad things do happen, which, when you have a clogged sewer line or a tenant that is giving you a really hard time, just take it one day at a time.
One day at a time. I like that. And just appreciate the moment. Look back. Think about where you are.
Yeah.
I don't mean to flip this on myself, but I had a moment this morning. I was making my coffee and I'm flying down to Orlando this afternoon for the Jake and Gino conference. And I'm looking at a pile of paperwork on my kitchen table. And I'm like, I have so much to do. I don't even want to go. Like I can be here. It's going to be good weather. I have so much to work on. And then I took a second to think, we hosted a meetup last night. That was a great meetup, Collecting Real Estate meetup, first Thursday of the month. It was so fun. A lot of great people there. Wake up this morning. I get to interview Scott Roberts, and then I get to fly to Orlando for a conference. Like 3 years ago, that would have been a dream, just even thinking about that. So just take the time to appreciate the day and take it day by day.
Yeah, 100%. And, even when you're just starting out, like just simple things, like appreciate those moments because then maybe down the road you won't have simple things, you'll have complex things. They're still all good, but appreciate all the seasons of it.
Yeah, and I feel like one day in hindsight, being 26 and single seemed like a simple time.
Yeah. Singleness is all right. It can be a good time to focus and build on yourself.
So staying on that personal level, our second question here, what are your 1 to 2 year personal goals outside of business?
I actually, I did think about this, and I do want to date, back to that single thing. So I'm trying to not be single anymore.
Good transition there.
Yeah. So I'm trying not to be single anymore. And I also see where, wherever your heart is, wherever your treasure is, there's your heart also. And, we could put all our treasure. Yeah, we're going Proverbs, man. So you can have a whole bunch of real estate and be very successful. And I've met people that have 1,000 units or major developments and are very, very wealthy. And it's like, what is the most beautiful thing in their lives that they like to share is, hey, I just had a grandkid, or my kids are healthy. And as you get to hear from these very successful people, and just see, where we're at right now is like, just, there's the beauty in life beyond just the deals. And I think for me personally, I want to focus on that. Maybe write some more poetry, do some more art, hopefully fall in love.
Man, I'm getting inspired here. There we go. Good stuff.
Yeah. How about you?
1 to 2 year personal goals? Oh, I don't think I've ever had to answer this question.
Yeah. Are you married now or dating?
No, I'm single. That's a goal, but I'm definitely not going to force that.
Yeah.
I have a piano that I look at across from my desk here, and that's something that I've been meaning to get into for years. And every time I start, it seems like I get distracted. So that's definitely high on the list.
Nice.
Maybe it takes the piano skills in order to meet the girlfriend.
Yeah.
One at a time here.
Piano man.
Yeah, there we go.
I like it.
All right. Yeah. Third and final question. Where can the listeners find you? How can they reach out to you? And how can they help you?
Cool. And thanks for listening, everybody. And easiest way to find me is the website easyhouserelief.com. It's easy to remember. Easy House Relief. And in terms of help, let's just collaborate. Invite me to your next party. Let's network. Let's do some deals and keep it fun, but then also collaborative. If you're just starting out and you find a deal, call Stephen and I if you need a partner to fund it. And on the bigger side of things, let's say you're buying 13 units, buying 20 units, and you come across, let's say, a smaller house that you're like, I don't want to renovate it. That'd be something I'd be interested in.
Good to know. Anyone in the upstate New York Capital District area.
Invite me to your parties.
There we go. So Scott,
we'll bring the piano.
We'll both be there. Scott's website, easyhouserelief.com, will be in the show notes. Scott, thank you for being here this morning. Really enjoyed the interview. Looking forward to talking again soon.
Thanks, Stephen, and enjoy Florida.